just an overlying sense in the house of chaos, you know, fear of what's going to happen, how things are going to turn out, feel of things being out of control. There's that sort of underlying energy that's just here in the house.
The local priest, Father John Connolly, had heard all the stories, and he too had taken sides.
Father Connolly is once reported to have said, "Jim Donnelly is a devil, the biggest devil I ever met. And Johanna Donnelly is an evil woman, and that she will one day die in the ditch."
From the pulpit, Father Connolly stirred up the passions that would seal the Donnellys' fate. Calling on the congregation to cleanse the parish of evil, a vigilante group formed, and he gave them their rallying cry. Bill Ryder is a descendant of one of those vigilantes. Exactly here, 115 years ago, his family's barn was burned. Like his ancestor before him, he blames the Donnellys.
Joanna Donnelly, during the day prior to the barn burning, had made some statements to the effect that the barn would be torched.
I think it was probably an accident. And I know if I do anything stupid that results in great destruction, I always am inclined to make up a good story that blames somebody else.
As the Ryder barn went up in flames, rational thinking seemed to go too.
Donnellys began to be blamed for everything, but they themselves certainly should have left. They shouldn't have stayed. They couldn't possibly win out against these people.
But as the storm of anger swelled, the pull of this place only grew stronger. James and Johanna would never be chased off their land.
He would die to preserve his dream. That's what he's telling me now. He couldn't back down. He had to. There was no going back.
Once again, James Donnelly was tried at this court in London, Ontario. This time it was for arson, and this time Johanna was charged too. But the judge found no evidence, and the Donnellys were set free. The vigilantes were inflamed and determined to seek justice their own way. 115 years ago, this old farm shed was the Cedar Swamp schoolhouse, a place of learning by day and secret plotting by night. It had become the vigilantes' hideout.
On February 3, 1880, my great-great-great-grandfather John met here with fellow members of a vigilante committee, and they decided that they were going to exact revenge on the Donnellys by getting a sworn confession. So they got here that night, and they had a few drinks, and they decided to head up to the Roman line to pay a visit to the Donnellys.
Bill Ryder's ancestors were caught up in a pitch of passion that would lead them here, the site of the original Donnelly house.
They felt their livelihoods were threatened, and this was a way of eliminating that threat. People took law in their own hands. That's how justice was dealt.
There was an ominous wind in the air as the forces of evil gathered. Homesteaders, neighbors, had chosen sides in this terrible feud. The madness was building. The stage was set. On the night of February 3rd, 1880, 30 men stood here. They come seeking revenge, and they go wild.
Then at that point, all hell breaks loose. And in the back door comes 20 to 25 men with clubs. The first one to go crashing to the floor was old Jim. He went down right here, massive head wound. Bridget ran from the kitchen into the darkened living room, over to the door that goes upstairs. She pulls it open, she pulls it shut, and she scampers upstairs to the unpartitioned loft. A few moments after that, although handcuffed, Tom, almost 6 feet tall, breaks free from his attackers, screaming and hollering through the darkened living room. He comes to the front door. He pauses for a moment. He puts his shoulder to it. He breaks the door open the opposite way and makes it out to about this spot right here. where the vigilantes that are outside rush in from behind and repeatedly stab him in the back with pitchforks. Johanna asked for a moment to pray. And they said, "Ha, you old bitch, you've had enough time." And they cracked her on the head, and she went down here. They came down, they took the lantern caps off, started splashing coal oil around. Someone said, "That's going to burn off. We have to soak the beds." While they're soaking the beds, Tom now, without any handcuffs, moaning and groaning in attempts to sit up. Somebody says, "Take a shovel and split that man's head open." A man came over with his shovel and hit Tom 6 times, opening up the top of the skull.
Their house was set on fire. The bodies of James and Johanna, 2 sons and a niece, were consumed by flames. In a final act of madness, 4 neighbors scavenged for their bones.
The constables reported that at the time of when they first arrived on the scene, there were 4 skulls in the fire, and when they finally came to pick the bodies up, there was only 1 left. And when they picked it up, it crumbled in their hands. So over the course of the day, and it was a long day, all the, I guess, carryable parts of the Donnelly bodies disappeared.
5 men were tried for the Donnelly massacres. In the calm of day, they were just simple farmers. The jury set them free.
I don't believe personally that it was a premeditated murder. I think what happened was they were trying to get a confession from the Donnellys and something went awry. The events history will prove that nobody knows except the people involved, and that'll stay secret with them in their graves.
Some said Johanna's last words were a curse, and superstition took flight.
The Christmas following the massacre, one of the leading vigilantes was driving his sleigh with his family over the railway tracks 1 mile north of Lucan and trying to beat the train, but the train won the race, and he was killed, his wife was killed, his brother was killed, and his sister were all killed in a terrible railroad accident. And of course that started up the curse story.
In the town of Lucan, the real curse was the festering divisions that would remain.
The curse has created those who, on one side, we don't want to talk about it, but at the same time, the other side is, we will never forget.
At the same parish church that once preached the Donnellys were devils, the congregation is still praying for deliverance.
We're going to do a little research and start asking some questions, and I was told I better not start interfering or I'll liable to end up being shot.
When I was a kid, you were told you were not to say the word Donnelly out loud, period.
Amid the lingering questions, there's a moral for today.
And these people, for the most part, were not bad people, but they were pushed into evil.
I am not for the Donnellys as much as I am for letting their ghosts rest, and the ghosts of those who thought they had justification for attacking them, let them rest too. Peace is an awful nice thing in the mind of an Irishman.
A Donnelly son planted 5 chestnut trees to commemorate the dead. 2 are still standing. Like James and Johanna, they are nourished by this soil. They are rooted here.
There have been times when I've been sitting home alone here, quietly reading, and I would hear somebody come up on the deck. I'd hear the sound of footsteps coming up onto the deck and then going through the door. I would get up and go and investigate and to see who was there. So I come out into the far room to see who's here, and I find no one. I have no idea what it really is. I do know that there's something that's here.
The fires of evil are sparked by rumor and fear. In the end, only compassion can save us.